Hey everyone, it's Zahava. Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be looking at my top 20 best books of Q1, which is January, February, and March of 2025. I'm not going to be giving any star ratings for these selections just because I want to give you like a little bit of a summary of what the book is about, and you guys can decide if that book is right for you or not. I didn't also pull any of my books out because 6 o'clock in the morning, still having my coffee, but I have so many videos that I want to get filmed for you guys, possibly even today. So, so I'm just going to start real early in the morning. We're going to get these books, these videos filmed and edited, and, so that you guys have some content, some good content for the month of May. If you are new here, welcome to the channel. I hope that you will like this video and subscribe and stick around and hang out with us. We're a great community of people here. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming back. So let's get into the video. I want to preface this by saying that so far we are April 23rd when I am filming this video, and I have completed 52 books so far this year, not counting the DNFs. But as we're going to be focusing only on Q1, which is January, February, and March of this year, we're going to be basing this list on a total of 43 books that I read, and I'm just going to talk to you about my favorite ones. And they're in no particular order, so we're just going to start with Second Glance by Jodi Picoult, which was my first Jodi Picoult book ever. And I know she's written like a ton of books and had some of her books adapted into movies. I did see My Sister's Keeper, but I'm not sure about any of the others. So I'm basing it just on the one book that I read of hers. And so Second Glance, basically, if you are unfamiliar with this title, has to do with a man called Ross Wakeman, who is essentially a ghost hunter. So when weird things start happening in the hometown that he grew up in, Ross, who is suffering his own sort of inner turmoil, decides to go back to his hometown and investigate the presence of paranormal activity that is happening in his hometown. And of course, Ross is going through some internal conflict. He's got some survivor's guilt and seems to think that he is unkillable. And because he thinks that he's unkillable, he tends to put himself in mortal danger time and again, kind of testing fate to see if this time he's gonna, succumb to the afterlife. This book gives mystery elements, love story elements, paranormal elements. It's just woven together with such expertise. I would definitely recommend it. I know that my reviews are maybe not very detailed, but I don't want to give too much away. And I feel like with this one, it's really easy to step over that threshold. So I don't want to give too much away, but Second Glance was definitely a really good one for me. The second one that's going to make it onto this list is Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. Now, this one is the first of a trilogy, which is kind of Viking inspired. So if you guys have been on BookTube or Bookstagram or in the book community for a little while, if you guys are fantasy readers, probably you have heard about this trilogy. Basically, you have 3 point of view characters. It's, like I said, Viking inspired, which is nice. It's a different twist on what we normally see from epic fantasy. And you're following 2 women and 1 male character who are god touched, and they they each have their own quests that they're going on for their own reasons, and you're just following them as they trek across these icy landscapes, and you sort of are left on like a cliffhanger at the end. Well, it's not really a cliffhanger. It's more like the story is meant to be told in a 3-book arc. So at the end of book 1, it kind of leads you into book 2, which is an element that I really enjoy because it means that it's not a standalone novel. It's something that you definitely have to keep reading to see where the story is going. That to me is like expert storytelling, because clearly it was planned that way and it wasn't a push from the publisher for the author to create a standalone novel and then expand upon it, which can kind of weaken the story over the long run, in my opinion. So Shadow of the Gods is the first installment in this trilogy, and they are some fierce warriors. If you guys like battle scenes, if you guys like sword fighting, axe fighting, and how people are connected to the earth and gods and animals, and it's just very like, for all that it's told in an icy landscape, it's just very kind of cozy in a way. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, it's some epic fantasy with some pretty brutal fight scenes, and it can get pretty gory, but like in the best way. So yeah, Shadow of the Gods. Can't give too much away from the plot or tell you too much about it without giving too much of the plot away. So again, it was one of my best books, and I highly recommend you guys pick it up. So number 3 is going to be The Ladies of the Secret Circus. And this one here is a standalone magical realism type of novel. It takes place in the US, but also there's some elements in Europe, like takes place in a dual setting of the US and of Paris. And it has to do with a circus that kind of appears and disappears, and 3 generations of women that are involved in the production and maintenance and organization of this circus. But also there's an element of mystery where our heroine sort of has to discover her past and like what her ties to this mysterious circus are. So basically we're following Lara Barnes, whose fiance disappears mysteriously on their wedding day. As we read pretty early on into the novel, we learn that there have been previous disappearances of people on the same road in the same area, the same town, but many years before, but always on the same date. And so our heroine Lara is hellbent on like investigating why this is happening and trying to figure out what her family may or may not have to do with these strange disappearances. So this is a book that is magical realism. It takes place over 2 time periods, 1925 and 2005. And it's just really accessible, a really quick read, short chapters, if that's something that you guys are going for. And I had a really great time with that one. So Ladies of the Secret Circus. Number 4 is going to be An Academy for Liars. And this one is going to be your dark academia mixed in with a little bit of magic. And I don't know. I listened to this book on audio. I had a really good time with it. I felt that the performance was really well done. I was shipping the right characters to get together. I'm not going to tell you if they did or if they didn't, but I had my favorites that I wanted to see get together. And it kind of came to mid reviews, but I really had a good time with it. I know I said I wasn't going to give star ratings, but I think I did give this one 5 stars if I remember correctly. And it's like new adults. So I think our heroine is about 24 years old or something when she comes and gets recruited for this school, for this Academy for Liars. And she's not having a great time. She's being plagued by these phantoms. She doesn't know where they're from. And essentially it follows that trope of she gets recruited into the school and they teach her all about her abilities and things happen. So if that's the kind of storyline that you guys are interested in, an Academy for Liars would be a really good, easy place to start to get a comforting read with a somewhat predictable storyline, but in that there is that comfort. So An Academy for Liars was really good for me. And if you know anything about me, I am not a big fan of new adult novels or young adult novels, new adult novels, but this one was okay. Like I had a good time with this one. Next, you have Out There by Kate Folk. So this one is a short story collection. If you guys are into that, it's short story, but also sci-fi. So really fun. There were some twisted stories in this one that you are kind of, frankly, I was impressed that the human brain could come up with plot lines and scenarios that are and prose that is so shocking. I listened to this book on audio. I feel like that only enhanced my experience of the book. I think that maybe if I had read the book, I would have gotten a different experience, but because I was listening on audio to this book, I had borrowed it from my library. It was, I don't know, like it was an experience. So that's all I'm going to say. If you guys like short stories, I highly recommend Out There by Kate Folk. Number 6 is The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides. And this was his, I think, debut novel, if I'm not mistaken. It's a little older. It's been out for a while. I have since read also The Maidens, and I have a copy of The Fury that I haven't gotten to yet, but it's the type of author that I do want to read the entire backlist. So The Silent Patient deals with a patient by the name of Alicia Berenson, and she is in a mental institution, and Theo, who is a therapist, comes in and tries to coax her into speaking to find out why she has gone mute. And the mystery sort of follows from there, but it is a mystery suspense thriller, and it's got some great reviews. It was one of my favorite books of the quarter, so I would definitely suggest that everyone pick that up and try it if you like a mystery thriller set in a mental institution. And you get to pick someone's brain and see why it is that they've gone mute. So good stuff. Book number 7 is going to be Piranesi, and that is by Susanna Clark. Now, she has written Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and also The Woods at Midwinter. Now, if you guys have been here before, you will know that I did not like The Wood at Midwinter. That was like a really terrible waste of my time that I can never get back. And so is me telling you this now in this video, but I'm trying to save you time. So like, don't spend money on that book. That's my recommendation. Do spend money on Piranesi. Now, I read Piranesi. I have a physical print book of Piranesi. It's kind of like people in the bookish community will tell you, and rightly so, that they can't tell you much about the novel without giving it away, but essentially you're following the titular character as he takes care of a house that he is sort of the custodian or the guardian of, and he's in this ever expansive physical location, but also it's like completely expansive all the time, and it's full of these statues that Piranesi interacts with. And there is one other person who is called the Other that periodically comes in and converses with Piranesi, and Piranesi is just meant to be the guardian of this house, and he sort of survives there and goes about his daily tasks. And you can't really say more without giving too much away about the story, but it's something that is at once surreal and like just chilling, but also kind of sweet in a way. And the character of Piranesi is so earnest in his activity and character, and just, you know, the way that he begins to wonder about the situation that he's in, because he has no memory of his life before becoming a custodian of this ever expansive house with many, many corridors and many, many rooms. And it's just like an interesting, I want to say it's kind of coming of age-esque, but it's also kind of mystery. It's also kind of, you know, self-discovery. I don't, Piranesi is just, it's just great. It's just great, and you should all read it, okay? I did try to get an audio copy of it because I would love to hear it read to me, but my library doesn't have it. And so, yeah, I could probably get it on Audible, but I'm waiting to see if the library is going to pick it up first. So that's if I ever do like a reread, it's going to be on audio for me. So anyway, I loved it. Okay. The next book that I read that I would recommend as one of my top books in Q1 of 2025 is going to be The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. And this one was kind of a sleeper hit for me. I was not expecting to like it this much. It has to do with twin sisters that one of them passes for white and the other one chooses to live her life as a Black woman, whereas the other sister who passes for white chooses to live her life as a white woman passing. And it really has to do with family ties, self-identity, why we tell the lies that we tell, and what our motivation for telling those lies could possibly be. And do we hurt people? Who are the people that we hurt if we're telling these lies for the reasons that we have decided are valid reasons? And like, who really gets caught in the crossfire? And like, what happens to the future generations when we make these tipping point decisions that will catalytically change the trajectory of future generations in our family? So I had a really, really good time with The Vanishing Half. There were moments that I found shocking, specifically the systematic racism within the Black community that we are seeing or being introduced to in this novel, which I would not have thought was a thing, but I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm ignorant or maybe I'm just learning. I'm happy to learn, but there were moments in this book where I was like really angry. I was angry at the characters. I was frustrated. I was mad. And for that, I mean, instant 5-star for me. So The Vanishing Half, definitely something that I would recommend. And I'm probably going to read more from this author for sure. Number 9 is going to be The Final Strife by Sahara El Arifi, and this is a sci-fi fantasy kind of first in a series of 3. It's got these class war, sapphic elements, very interesting world building, and yeah, I mean, it's got very strong female characters, which I always love to see in a fantasy novel, and very interesting elements that I have never seen in any other fantasy novel or any other novel really, where the persecuted class of people, or one of the classes of people, let's say, that you are introduced to in this book, actually don't have the ability to speak. So what happens is when they're born, they cut out their tongues and they cut off their hands. So basically they're left with like these stubs, and they have to learn to make a sign language in order to communicate with those around them. So I thought that was a fantastic invention. element of type of thing. And I think for me, it was one of the reasons that I was kind of hooked to this story. So yeah, I mean, for me, The Final Strife is great. I've only read the first book in the trilogy, but I do have the second one already on my physical TBR, and definitely I'm going to acquire the third copy at some point. I don't know when. It's going to be soon though. Number 10, I listened to this one on audio, and I would highly recommend that you guys do this as well because it read super duper well, and it is I Who Have Never Known Men. Now, this is an older book. It's been out for a long time. I'll write the year across the screen for you guys so that you can see when it was published. It is a book originally written by a French-speaking author, and it was translated into English and probably many other languages. This is a book that's like kind of a dystopian, feminist, sort of, I don't know, like sci-fi almost elements in it. And it's just about a girl who grows up amongst a group of women, and they are kind of prisoners. And for the first little bit of the novel, there are male guards kind of watching over them. And then eventually something happens and they manage to escape the room that they have been living in for most of this girl's life. And they just sort of like go on, I guess, a not an adventure, but they sort of like get on with their lives type of thing, but there's like no men anymore. So it's just very, very interesting. And it's how this girl, it is definitely a coming of age story, but in these really surreal dystopian circumstances. And it's got like, the ending is like kind of a gut punch. It's kind of a gut punch. So I would suggest that if you guys are unfamiliar with this title, this is definitely one to get your hands on sooner than later. Number 11 is going to be My Dark Vanessa. Okay, so yes, the subject matter is definitely one of immense sensitivity. It has to do with a high school girl that develops a sexual relationship with her teacher, and it just goes on from there. And it doesn't just take place in high school. It's a relationship, and it's a trauma that follows Vanessa throughout her entire life, basically, up until, so we're dealing with dual timelines. We're dealing with the flashbacks to her high school years, and also we're going forward to her adult years to see how basically this type of abuse can be detrimental to somebody throughout their life, and how it's not just so easy to let go and forget. And yeah, so I just found this one very, very interesting. I will say that I did find it a little long. I feel like it could have been definitely reduced by at least 100 pages, but it does give a very, very good insight into how it could possibly be for someone who has survived this type of abuse. And it's not so black and white. It's not so black and white. So it's kind of a crazy ride, but definitely something that is out of the ordinary. It is a fiction novel, but I would recommend it for anyone curious about the subject matter. Number 12 is going to be Here One Moment by Liane Moriarty. So I talked about this one recently, I think when I did my March reading wrap up, so it's still kind of fresh in my memory, but this one also was my first from this author, who is an Australian author, and this book has to do with a flight that is coming from Hobart to Sydney, and on the flight there is a psychic lady that sort of predicts the age and death situation of all the passengers on the plane. And it is a question of what happens afterwards. So you have two point of view narrators. You have a first person narrator who is the lady herself, and then you have a third person narrator who is following basically all of the other people in the story that the lady, this sort of touched lady, has affected through her prediction. So we get to see how their stories play out. We get to see if the psychic lady is right or is she wrong about the deaths that she has predicted. And we also get to know a little bit more about this psychic lady and how she came to be who she is, and who we meet as this sort of crazy person on the plane at the beginning of the novel. So I felt that the conclusion of the story was extremely satisfying, and I had a really great time with it. So definitely recommend that one. Number 13, and perhaps appropriately for number 13 on this list, is Maeve Fly. So this is a book that I picked up because of the cover, but I also happen to have listened to it on audio. So Maeve Fly is a wild ride. It is a pulp horror. It is about a girl who's in her early early 20s who plays a popular princess at a family resort, and she basically has some issues. She has some interpersonal issues. I I feel like she's trying really, really hard to connect with people, that she has like kind of a difficulty connecting with people, and tends to cling on to relationships in a maybe not so healthy way. Maeve is trying to figure relationships out, figure out her friendships, her familial relationships, her love relationships, and in her attempts to become closer to the people that are in her world, things happen. And yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like a wild ride. This book is definitely a thriller, a horror. It gets pretty gruesome, and you get to know potentially why Maeve is the way she is. The book is definitely slasher. It's definitely macabre, and it's, you know, if you guys are fans of horror, or if you just like the cover art, you know, pick this one up. You're not going to be sorry. Number 14 is going to be Dogs of War by Adrian Tchaikovsky. And again, this one is the first in a series, but it is a fantastic introduction if you're unfamiliar with the author, because the protagonist in this novel is a bioform dog who is just really concerned about being his best self, doing his best by his master, by his teammates. You know, they are meant to be weapons of destruction, but Rex also comes to find out that potentially he may be being used by his master. So it's really just a story of self-discovery with like a dog element, a pet element, and of course, because Rex is a bioform dog, his brain kind of works that way, like the way a dog's brain would work if dogs could talk. So if you guys are fans of dogs, if you guys are fans of sci-fi, if you guys would like a self-contained first installment in a trilogy, then I would say go for it. I had a really great time with this book, and there were times when I was misty. I cried, you know, and some fantastic characters. You've got like a bear bioform and also a swarm of bees. And I do mean a swarm of bees bioform, so that the character herself is a swarm of bees, which I think is just fantastic. I've never encountered anything like that in my life, and I just had such a great time with this book, because, you know, Rex is trying to figure out, am I really doing the right thing? And that is a very legitimate question for everybody. I think everybody could relate to that. So what am I doing? Why am I doing it? And, you know, the story just goes on from there. Okay, number 15 is actually going to be an arc that I received via NetGalley, and I listened to it for 2 hours on audio. It is called Murder by Memory, and it is the quaintest little mystery, sci-fi space opera mystery. It takes place on a spaceship, and it's very Jessica Fletcher, very much Murder, She Wrote, very much a lady of a certain age who is on a spaceship, who one day wakes up in a body that isn't hers, and in another area of the spaceship, a body is discovered. And so Dorothy has to figure out, first of all, why she's not in her own body, and secondly, how did that corpse end up in another area of the spaceship? So it's kind of like a cozy mystery with some knitting elements. So if you guys are knitters, you're probably going to have a really good time with this one as well. Again, I picked it up as an arc on NetGalley, and it was only 2 hours, the audio. So it's a short book, but it packs a mean punch. Number 16 is one of two that I have in common with Beautifully Bookish Bethany, who's linked to the video where I got the idea to do this video from. I will leave down below in the comments. But number 16 for me is going to be Fingersmith, which I happen to be reading at the same time as Beautifully Bookish Bethany, so that's awesome. So Fingersmith for me was actually a reread of a Sarah Waters novel, which had been adapted by BBC, I want to say in like 2006, potentially. I don't know, I'll write the year on the screen for you, but it was adapted into a mini-series starring Sally Hawkins and also the wonderful Charles Dance. So if you guys like Sally Hawkins or Charles Dance, I would definitely suggest checking out the BBC adaptation of this book. But I read the book. It's a little over 500 pages, and I've read it. I've listened to it on audio not once, but twice. So it is a reread for me. It's my third time through Fingersmith, and I happened to get through it this quarter as well. And it really has mystery thriller, lots of plot twists, and also sapphic elements, if that's something that you're looking for. But essentially, Fingersmith has to do with a Fingersmith, a young girl who is a thief, and she gets approached by a con artist friend of the family who suggests that they pull a long range con on a rich girl that he has heard of, who is going to come into an inheritance at some point when she gets married. And he's proposing that Sue come along with him as he tries to woo and marry this girl in the hopes of being able to steal her fortune. And thus, once they're married, he could throw her into a madhouse and then control her entire fortune. So that is basically where you guys are set up with this novel. And things happen, and there are some plot twists. And it's not my first Sarah Waters. I've read also Tipping the Velvet by her. And it's just, it's just like a fun, twisty mystery suspense novel that takes place in Victorian England. And it's just a really good time, Number 17 on this list is going to be Cold Eternity by S.A. Barnes, which is another arc that I received from NetGalley. This one is a horror suspense science fiction thriller taking place on a space station where our protagonist has come because she needs a job. She's running away from a bad situation and she has basically nowhere else to go. So she takes this job that nobody wants on this space station where basically her chief task is to push a button every 3 hours until the end of time. But of course, with any story of this nature, things happen on the spaceship. She starts to see little things going bump in the night, and she tries to investigate what is going on the spaceship that she is familiar with already, having traveled there on a class field trip during her adolescent days. So it's just a weird, creepy tale of how Haley is like on this spaceship, and she has to figure out what's going on and the reasons behind it. And it's just a good time. It's a perfect mix of sci-fi, horror, mystery thriller. So if you like that kind of thing, I would highly suggest. Number 18 is going to be the second book that I have in common in Q1 of 2025 with Beautifully Bookish Bethany, who again, I have to say thank you so much for your video because you inspired mine. So thanks for that. I also read Chain Gang All-Stars and had a fantastic time with that. Now, in Beautifully Bookish Bethany's video, she said that she didn't know where to classify Chain Gang All-Stars. She was saying how she thought it might be a lit fic. I would put it actually more as a sci-fi because it is kind of dystopian in a way. It's kind of mixing genres of like Gladiator and also I would put it more as like a sci-fi, but she's right in the sense that like it's hard to sort of qualify where it was best suited. But I would say that Chain Gang All-Stars is probably more of a sci-fi because what you have in this situation is people that are on death row can opt to become gladiators. And if they survive long enough, they can be released from their sentence. So essentially they get a 3-year term where if they sign up for this televised program where people are getting corporate sponsorships and things like that, then and they survive the fighting in the arena, which is really a fight to the death, then at the end of their 3-year term, once they reach a certain level of championship, then they can win their own freedom. And it really is just a comment on the US prison system, how things work there. And even though it has these gut-punching sort of sci-fi elements, it also intersperses real data, real actual data from the US prison system as having to do with how Black people are treated in the US prison system. So very, very interesting read. Short chapters, real page turner. I had no problem turning the pages. I was flipping pages. It was a library read for me. And it's a book that if I ever come across it at a thrift store, I will definitely pick up a copy of it. It's not a book that I would go out and buy a copy of because I read the story. I'm not likely to read it again. But if I did find it at a thrift store, I would definitely buy it at a reduced price to add to my collection. Because like I said, it was a library read, but still one of my better reads of this quarter. And it is a book that's going to stay with me for a really long time. I'm not going to lie. I've never read anything like it. I have to say that the ending of this book, I agree with Bethany. It was a punch in the gut. It's going to stay with me for a long time. And I'm going to say that I wasn't expecting the ending that I got. I'm just going to say that. I'm going to say that. So Chain Gang All-Stars, probably going to be one of my tops of 2025, even though we're only at the end of Q1. But it was definitely a 5-star read for me. And you should all go get it right now. It's fantastic. And number 19 and number 20 are actually going to be a duology by T. Kingfisher. It's actually, I think, part of a trilogy in the end, but there are 2 books out, and that is What Moves the Dead and What Feasts at Night. So we're going to be lumping those into books number 19 and 20 for this list. And the first one, What Moves the Dead, is going to be a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's The House of Usher. These are short novellas, 150, 160 pages, and our protagonist is a queer protagonist by the name of Alex Easton. Alex goes to visit some friends in this manor house which has fallen into disrepair, and Alex has to try and figure out why their friends are kind of sick you know, or ailing. And it's kind of just like a creepy little mystery, either for mycologists or not for people who have mushroom sensitivity. So that's going to be my warning for that one. In What Feasts at Night, we have Alex again, but T. Kingfisher at this point can have a lot more creative license with Alex's character. And in What Feasts at Night, you have a continuation of Alex's adventures, but also much greater character development and much more humor. It is a dark humor. It is definitely a sardonic type of tone. So if that's something that you guys like in your novels, then I would highly suggest that you pick these ones up. They're really easy as palette cleansers. They're really easy if you're looking for low-hanging fruit. And also the cover art. The cover art, I'm sold on the cover art alone. So yeah, so this pretty much is going to wrap up the video today. Thank you so much if you are still here. I hope you guys found some books that you might be interested in based on my suggestions. I tried not to give too much away because I can really like over talk, and I just didn't want to give too much away, but I wanted to give you at least my 20 best ones of Q1. And if there are some books that you guys have never heard of or that you think you might like to read based on this list, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to interact with you all. And I've got some other videos I'm going to film for you guys today, some other list videos, which are going to be like my DNFs of Q1, and also the books that I want to get to for Q2, if I can commit to such a thing. So anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you to all of my returning subscribers, and especially to the new subscribers. You guys are amazing. And I will see you again when I film the next video a little bit later today, possibly tomorrow, and I'll have some more bookish stuff, bookish content. So see you again in the next one. Ciao for now.